An unprecedented emergency is unfolding in Victoria. More than 130,000 homes are without power. It's a lot after fierce storms smashed the state.
Yeah, wind gusts of up to 120 kilometres an hour brought down trees and power lines. Conditions so dangerous, rescue crews were ordered to take shelter. And joining us now is State Agency Commander Jackson Bell from the Victorian SES. Jackson.
Partner agencies had to make some decisions to cease some of our operations overnight just because some of the impacts was just so significant, including a number of our own vehicles being struck by fallen trees, which thankfully none of our crews were significantly injured. So it was very, very much a significant night indeed.
Just looking at that map there of all the incidents that transpired last, look at that. That's a busy night. Can you recall a busier night? It would have been a long time.
You were talking about a bioengineered monster virus, and you were ruling that.
I definitely have a great respect for nature, but we also have to have a great appreciation for what humans can do.
It's a scientific question that's ignited a political firestorm, now with renewed attention as the possibility of an accidental lab leak gains prominence. President Biden has even asked intelligence agencies to redouble their efforts to investigate the origins of COVID-19, and multiple probes have been launched around the world, including one led by the U.S. State Department and another by the World Health Organization, all determined to uncover the truth. Could this novel coronavirus come from the dark side of Mother Nature or from a lab? And if it did come from a lab, was it an accident, or could it have been an engineered bioweapon? And complicating the task of solving this mystery, the whole topic has become weaponized, a political cudgel.
They could have stopped it, but they allowed it to come out. China virus, Kung flu.
With some, like David Asher, who ran the State Department's investigation into the origins of the COVID virus, accusing China of negligence for not alerting the world sooner.
We're going to turn now to that record-breaking heat. Temperatures in the west have climbed to the triple digits, with heat and dry conditions fueling several large wildfires. Ginger is live at Lake Powell in Arizona. Good morning, Ginger.
You know, George, this is all-time record heat we're talking about, not just for June, but ever. Santa Fe, New Mexico tied at 102, their all-time record just yesterday. And today we could see easily 3 dozen daily record highs. When it's this hot, it bakes the soil and foliage, and wildfire danger soars.
This morning, wildfires and record heat smothering the west. Skies in Ventura County, California, a haunting gray, filling with smoke from the towering flames of the Casitas fire, engulfing the hillside beneath. Firefighters rushing to mitigate the nearly 200-acre blaze. The Golden State suffered its most destructive fire season in history last year. And this year, we're off to a wicked start. Twice the acreage burned so far this year at the same time in 2020. In Riverside County overnight, evacuations ordered for the Flats fire, the flames quickly spreading to over 400 acres. The skies eerily thick with smoke over Arizona, too. The Telegraph fire, burning now for 11 days, has already destroyed more than 20 structures, including homes. And overnight, raucous winds and low humidity fueled the spread. And in Texas, the sweltering heat topping 100 degrees. A large number of power plants unexpectedly taken offline for maintenance. Now, you'll remember the embattled Energy Reliability Council of Texas. They are trying to prevent another collapse of the power grid, like the one that they saw this past winter. They've issued a conservation alert telling people, please dial back energy consumption. Already this month, there have been numerous forced outages in a near-record demand for electricity.
A desperate situation in Sonoma County. Lake Mendocino, a major water source, continues to dry up. Residents in Healdsburg being told to shut down all outdoor watering systems.
Healdsburg has a major drought problem. It began asking its residents to cut water use by 20% clear back on May 3rd, when there was still some hope of rain. But now, all automated landscape irrigation is banned, and residents are limited to 74 gallons per day. And here's why. The city gets its water exclusively from Lake Mendocino, northeast of Ukiah, and it's in a world of hurt. At 39% of capacity, the boat ramp is far from the water's edge, and fishermen have quite a hike to get to anything resembling moisture. What happens when a city runs out of water? It's a scary scenario, one residents are only now coming to grips with.
We're way past brown lawns. Yeah, we're trying to think long-term in terms of what if this goes on for 2 years? How do we cope with this situation?
At Lake Mendocino, John Ramos, KPIX5.
Как на Гавайях смотрел. Реклама Баунти, помнишь?
Водила смелый, а?
The damage here stretches for miles. Wind and rain from Tropical Storm Claudette ripping through the south, the system spawning tornadoes.
You can feel the trailer lift up and fly, and then started flipping.
Destiny Ward was inside and somehow survived.
All that's inclusive in my trailer.
In other areas, it was the water building way too fast, flooding communities from Louisiana through Alabama. First responders say a car likely hydroplaned on I-65 just south of Montgomery, setting off a chain reaction crash.
I've never seen anything like it. It was horrific.
At least 10 people died in the pileup, including 8 children, ages 4 to 17, traveling in a small bus operated by the Alabama Sheriff's Youth Ranch. The group was just 2 hours from home after spending a week at the beach. A string of tornadoes and driving rains also left parts of the Midwest in ruins. The Chicago suburbs of Woodridge and Naperville dealing with some of the worst of it.
In the middle, running down the stairs, I just could feel the whole house shake.
Teams now working through the damage.
This desert wasteland in southern Madagascar was once arable and fertile, but years of drought mean only a few patches of green remain. The lack of water has destroyed crops, and sandstorms cover whatever's left in a layer of dust. The food here has nearly run out. Many families are forced to eat insects or leaves to survive.
In the morning, I prepare this plate of insects. I clean them up as best I can, given there's almost no water. My children and I have been eating this plant every day for 8 months, because we have nothing else to eat and no rain to allow us to harvest what we have sown.
Aid groups are warning of catastrophe, especially for children like these two, now orphans after their mother died of hunger. Their arms are wasting away, while their stomachs are bloated by malnutrition.
I rely on God. Today we have absolutely nothing to eat except cactus leaves that we are trying to clean up. We have nothing left. Their mother is dead and my husband is dead. What do you want me to say? Our life is all about looking for cactus leaves again and again to survive.
Madagascar's southern region is the epicenter of the crisis. More than 1 million people, about half of the area's population, need food aid. And the coronavirus pandemic has made everything worse, slowing the delivery of much-needed supplies. Many of these women and children have walked for hours to get help.
We're facing the worst drought in over 40 years. And this is an area where people depend on their own agriculture, homegrown school meals, smallholder farmers. This is how they live down here, but with drought back to back to back, People can't survive. And so the government, partnering with the World Food Program and others, we're doing the best we can. But it's a terrible situation.
Poor rains during this year's planting season suggest yet another harvest will fail. The UN's Food Agency says the world must act now, or a generation could be lost to famine. Alexia O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
Now, climate change, we know, has made our lives a lot more difficult. The seas are rising, our summers are hotter, the cyclones are getting bigger. But for Australia, the problem is a bit more immediate. In Australia, they're dealing with animal invasions. Spiders are blanketing fields and roads with their webs, and millions of mice are cutting their way through farms. It may sound like some heavenly reckoning, but these animals are just reacting to the extreme weather. Here's a report.
Welcome to the state of Victoria, where the spiders have mounted an invasion. Scientists call it ballooning. Victoria saw some wild weather last week. Dozens of trees were toppled and parts of the state were flooded. Sensing danger, the spiders fled. They took refuge in these fields and road signs. Before long, they were weaving webs all over the place. A countryside blanketed by sleek, silvery coils. The spiders are long gone, but their webs remain. Elsewhere, there's another invasion underway. A deluge of mice gnawing and biting their way across eastern Australia. This week, they reached here, the Wellington Correctional Centre. Authorities could see the disastrous headlines. Prison Break, the Mice Plague Edition. So they acted fast. Around 200 staff and 420 inmates have been shifted out. And now, the cleanup begins. The rodents are hanging from the roof and burrowing into walls. Once they are cleared, the inmates will return. Locals say this plague is the worst they can remember, and experts predict it could get worse. Australia's seesaw climate is causing these strange events. Unusually long dry spells followed by biblical rains. Hardly surprising that the animals are acting out. The government is using an acute poison to repel the mice, but how many rodents can you kill? And how long before the next wave of rodent road rash? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
President Joe Biden came to office promising changes in US policy toward Cuba. But months after he moved into the White House, sanctions remain in place and diplomacy is strained at best. The crippling effects of the US embargo recently led to the suspension of cash deposits in US dollars, a major source of income for ordinary Cubans. It's all a far cry from President Obama's historic visit in 2016. When relations were normalized, the US embassy reopened and travel to Cuba allowed. President Biden, it seems, is not following suit. In essence, that means retaining hundreds of tough measures put in place by President Trump, including redesignating Cuba a state sponsor of terrorism. Critics of the embargo say despite calls for democracy and improved human rights in Cuba, changes can be made. Major modifications to such a complex and long-standing web of laws would need congressional approval, something not likely to happen. For more than 25 years, the UN General Assembly has voted in favor of ending the US embargo on Cuba. But President Biden, who was part of the Cuba normalization process during the Obama administration, has so far left the embargo firmly in place. Andy Gallagher, Al Jazeera, Miami, Florida.
On Wednesday, parts of Australia reinstated restrictions to counter the threat of a new outbreak.
Clearly, this is an evolving situation we would have preferred not occurred, but given what has occurred, the New South Wales government will be taking action today to limit the spread of what is a very contagious variant of COVID.
Neighbouring New Zealand also sounded the alarm, raising its alert level and temporarily closing its border. The new Delta variant of the novel coronavirus, first detected in India, is more infectious and health experts say a serious threat to eradicating the disease. To make matters worse, more than 20 cases of an even more infectious strain dubbed Delta Plus have been found in 3 Indian states. Health officials say the new mutation is of serious concern. On Tuesday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel criticized European countries after a rise in infections in tourism-dependent Portugal, where half of new cases are the Delta variant. China plans to keep pandemic border restrictions in place for at least another year, even suspending some domestic flights for fear of a new outbreak. And on Wednesday, Russia announced its highest single-day death toll in months, blaming the new variant for a surge in cases. Indonesia, too, has detected the Delta variant. In the capital, Jakarta, an empty swamp is the site of a new cemetery, specifically for coronavirus victims. As much of the world struggles with lockdown fatigue, many countries are struggling with new outbreaks and still burying their dead. Zain Basravi, Al Jazeera.
Life on Earth may recover from a dramatic climate shift, but humans might not survive. That is a sobering conclusion from a UN report, and it confirms what many scientists have been saying in the last few years. Climate change is happening faster and hitting us harder than expected. Early models predicted that it was unlikely we would see the worst consequences before the year 2100. But according to the report, that could be the reality when a child born today turns 30. Currently, the world has already warmed by 1 degree Celsius. On current trends, we are heading for 3 degrees of warming. But even if the world sticks to the ideal 1.5 degree target, the UN climate body says that conditions will change beyond our ability to adapt. 350 million people living in urban areas will be exposed to severe drought, ravaging crops. Millions more will suffer from malnutrition, while coastal communities will be at risk from floods and deadly storms. The report also warns that these changes could be irreversible and lead to cascading impacts, with some regions experiencing multiple calamities at once. The report was not due to be released until February of 2022, but was leaked to the media. This as world leaders prepare for the COP26 climate summit later in November, described as potentially a make or break moment for the planet.